And the fact that it's the best playing guitar I've ever played in my life, and definitely the best playing guitar I've ever owned. And I'm not saying that, anecdotally. I'm like, everything I compare it with, like that. Anytime I have a hard time with a guitar lick, uh, I grab that guitar. So I try to do like a sweeping arpeggio that I have a hard time with, on my 25 and a half inch scale, or definitely like on the 7 string with the 26-inch scale stuff. Have a hard time with it. I work it. I pick that guitar up and I almost do it perfectly every time. It's that good. Is that good. So again, if you they're not a conventional guitar. So if you're coming from a Stratocaster, yes, it will feel like you're attaching an alien to your body, till you get used to the shape of it. But once you get used to the shape of it, oh my God. And if you set them upright, oh, like the way I set that guitar up is just absolutely. And I play 10 to 42, 10 to 46s on there, like, whatever. And anything you can do on 9 gauge strings that you could pretty much do on the 10 to 46, except for, string bends are a little bit harder because it's a thicker string. But the fretwork on both of these guitars, fantastic. When the SG61 reissue was brand new, probably would be a better playing guitar than that. So for the guy that was like, yeah, no, they're not metal guitars. Well, they're an everything guitar. That's the thing. It's the jack of all trades. It does everything. It's just you have to kind of set it up to what you want it to do. So if you want more cleans, you pick the SG with the, like I say, the P90s or the Burstbucker ones, or most of them will be Burstbucker Pros or whatever. And if you want more metal, maybe you might want to swap out for some Duncans or EMGs or whatever, Damasio's, whatever you want. And that'll give you the modern sound. Price-wise, yeah, they've gone up a little bit ridiculous. When these things were like, between $1,300 and $1,500, I think they bang for the buck. They were dead on. Now they're about $1,000 more to start for an SG standard, and the SG Supremes are like, they're like $4,000 or $5,000. That's ridiculous. Yeah. This guitar, brand new, was about $1,900. I got it for about $1,650 plus tax. So yeah, it was a little bit more price, but again, the thin, slim taper neck, was to me, it was worth it. So like, when you have a guitar that plays this well, the price is almost irrelevant. So, and it's, like, I know there's a lot of Gibson haters out there and stuff and I get that, all the guys just trying to justify his purchase. Okay, I'll put it to you this way. I've owned 54 guitars in my life, including all the guitars I have now. This is the third longest guitar I've owned at 18 years. I've had that guitar. Yeah, it looks like it's brand new. It's not. It's 18 years old. For a while, that was the only guitar I had electric-wise for a very short time, but then I bought this one, and then these were the only two electric guitars I've had for this one, I think 2009 to now, so 15 years with this one, right? But this was also my dream guitar. And it's been hard to find something that beats them, whatever. But for modern sounds, I didn't want to throw different pickups in. I want to keep them as original as possible. Okay, yes, I did modify that guitar myself, but I didn't want to, throw in Duncan pickups. If I had two of them, maybe I would. Like, if I buy an SG standard in the future, something that I know isn't like these things. Research SG3s, you'll see what I mean. They went up in value quite a bit because they were only making 1,000 of these a year for about 3 or 4 years. Mine's C268 is mine. So it's not really a custom shop, but it's kind of like the one-offs. These, they reintroduced them, well, in 1959. You had the Les Paul, but the first Les Paul SG that turned into just an SG was the 61. That's when it got renamed. So even though the guitar shape and everything was a couple of years old by that time. 1961 was the first of the SGs. And this is pretty close to an original how it was made. It's, again, a very thin guitar. It's even thinner than the regular SG standards of today, and so is the neck. One of the best necks I've ever, favorite shaped necks. It's just the best all around. It's not too thin. It's not too wide. It's not too flat, not too curved. It just does everything perfectly. And this guitar, they reissued it again in either 92 or 94. But I know I rediscovered them in 92 or in 1994 because I was looking at the SG 62 reissue. And the first time I picked, I still remember the first time I picked one of these up. It was right the same year, I think, when they introduced the Les Paul Studios. And I remember the Les Paul Studios are now what you would call the Les Paul Special, not special, but the Les Paul Tribute. Yeah, the tributes. Yeah, so those things, right, where they got like no binding on them and they're a little more, plain down, a little more dressed down. Well, I remember I wanted to try the blue Les Paul one, and they were $1,100 at the time. And I remember I tried it, and right beside it was this thing. I was like, the first time I saw this small pickguard was obviously Angus Young holding it. It was a magazine called Hit Parader. Anybody that's my age will probably laugh because probably got a little bit of a flashback there. But it was basically a magazine that was, rock star gossip, who was going on tour. There was interviews or whatever. And I remember there was a cover of a magazine with Angus Young on it. And he had a guitar that looked almost identical. Like whether it was an original 61, an original 61, I don't know, probably. But I just remember looking at it and saying, wow, that thing was just gorgeous. And I remember that guitar must have been huge, right? So like a really large guitar because, the way it hung off Angus Young. And then my first band I ever seen live, big band I ever seen live was AC/DC. And LA Guns opened up for them. And I remember Angus Young came up. It was, the song was Blow Up, Heat Seeker from the Blow Up Your Video album, right? And this big missile comes out of the stage. Big ICBM missile comes out of the center of the stage. You can hear him, the song starting, whatever. And then a door opens up and he jumps out. And he's like this tiny little freaking like elf or something. And it's like, I looked at him and I looked at the guitar because I had not seen one of these in person yet. And I'm like, he's tiny. Because the first time, actually, no, I did see the guitar before I saw AC/DC. Because when I saw this 62 reissue and I looked at it, I was expecting the guitar to be this much bigger. And I'm like, my first thought when I saw the 62 reissue, which I was going to buy as a teenager, was that it's like, wow. My first thought was, Angus Young must be a tiny guy because like this guitar is just tiny. But like in the picture, he made it look so big, like it took up half his body, you know what I mean? So for the first time I saw Angus Young, it's like, yeah, he's a hobbit. He's a tiny, tiny guy. So anyway, a little story there for you. But yeah, for those that don't quite understand the concept of the SG, once you get into them, you're into them. Even the SG standards right now, like the cheapest SG I think you can get is like $1,800 Canadian at current prices, and that's the SG Special or Tribute or whatever. And I remember back in 2006, the SG Specials at the time, again, basically no binding on them, dressed down. It had a 490, 491, 492 pickup, whatever, those kind of, the 496. Those were the kind of pickups, variations of. It's kind of like the difference between Burst Sparkle 1, 2, and 3, that type of thing. So just variations of the 490 series anyway. And they weren't that impressive, but they were like $800. There was a cool SG called the SG Menace, which was like $800 at the time, and it had like it was an ebony fingerboard, and it had no inlays on it except for at the 12th fret it had a brass knuckle there, like a inlay of a brass knuckle. It was a really cool guitar, but I didn't buy it. I held out and I bought that. And I don't regret that at all. So yeah, there are guitars. I know some people will, the people that don't like them, you can't say anything to convince them. But if you're interested in them, they are definitely worth. Well, something I talked about in yesterday's video, from the making of this video, was if you weren't sure if you wanted to splurge that kind of money on an SG, see if you got like a local music store that you can rent one from, and just rent maybe the standard. So with the standard, yeah, you don't get the nicer pickups, but with the standard, if you bought an SG standard, you wouldn't feel guilty about swapping out the pickups at all, and just keep the original ones, and just put them aside. So if you ever go to sell the guitar, you can rehook up the original ones again. And the SG standard, a good workhorse guitar, stays in tune quite well. Like SGs, something I didn't realize about how I wind my strings on the SGs. Robert Baker, his channel, he was trying, like the G string on a Gibson is always like the 3/3 headstocks have always kind of been a bit of a design disaster, so to speak. So which led to tuning issues, but I've never had a lot of problems with tuning with my Les Pauls or my SGs. And one of the things is that the way I wind my string up, and I didn't know about that. But like people were trying it, and it actually does kind of help the problem. This guitar doesn't go out of tune any more than my Jacksons do, any more than my PRSs do. Like if you really, really hammer on a guitar, it'll go out of tune. If you try to put it out of tune, you'll put it out of tune. But when I'm recording and stuff like that, it doesn't seem to go out of tune that much. Like sometimes they're finicky, sometimes they're not. But any place I've ever played live with my Les Paul,